Salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to this early morning, middle of the night bonus. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this early morning, middle of the night bonus upload, shall we?
About a year ago, I moved my family and I to a home way out in the woods in Tennessee. I want to be brief here, but I need to get this off of my chest, and after looking into this matter a little more, I have a lot more details that I think will paint a clear picture in the end, so please bear with me. The nights here can be extremely loud between crickets, tree frogs, and cicadas. It can almost be deafening. One night, not too long after we moved in, I had forgotten something in my car and decided to head outside and get it. The first thing that struck me as odd was that my dog wouldn't go outside with me. My dog goes everywhere with me, as I am her whole world. But not this night. As I held the door open, she looked out, then looked up at me like, nope. So I walked out, shut the door behind me. The second thing that caught me off guard was there was not a peep. It was dead silent. Still shrugging this off, and walked down my front steps and headed toward the car. When I had gotten about 10 feet from my car, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt as if though something was watching me. I looked around and saw nothing. After I reached into the car for what I had forgotten to grab earlier, I had this feeling like something was moving toward me. I took a step back and then checked around. All of a sudden, I heard one of my hedges next to me that lined the walkway to our front door rattle. At first, I thought it was a rabbit that I had spooked, as I had seen one earlier in the day, right where I was. A few seconds later, I heard the sound of a large rock about the size of a cantaloupe landing a few feet away from me. It hit the walkway and bounced into the shrub. I drew my gun and called out and said, "Whoever that is about to get shot." After a few seconds of nothing, I began to think, well, maybe it's just some local teenagers messing with the new people. I holstered my firearm and turned and started to walk back toward the front door. Almost as soon as I turned toward my house, I heard this deep panting sound. It sounded like a huge dog, but what made me turn back to the front door was that it sounded like it was right behind me. I leapt up onto the porch, turned, and drew my gun again, expecting something right there, but again, there was nothing. A couple of weeks later, I was on the porch at night, sitting on the bench with my wife. She got up and walked inside to get something, and as soon as she shut the door, I heard that panting sound again. I couldn't see anything yet. This sounded like it was right atop of me. The sound was coming from everywhere, and it was very loud. Again, I couldn't see anything, so I went back inside the house. Now at this point, I'm questioning moving here, but after nothing else really happened, I let it go. A month or so later, it was a really rainy and stormy night. It's around 9 p.m. My wife and I are enjoying listening to the rain and talking about how relaxing the rain is. Me, growing up in Oregon, loved the rain. And for the past 10 years, we lived in Vegas, where it would dump the entire year of rain in one day, then be bone dry for the rest of the year. For my wife, who grew up in Nevada, rain was such a rare thing. She loved going outside and watching it. So For us, this was an enjoyable experience. Except this night in particular, things took a weird turn. As we were sitting there talking about the rain and relaxing, my wife stopped me and said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "No. What did you hear?" She said, "I swear it sounded like a child calling for help out in the woods beside our house." I said I didn't hear anything. After a few moments of us listening intently, she said, "There it is again." I said, "I didn't hear it." "Sweetie, are you sure you're not just hearing things?" She looked at me offended that I didn't hear anything and said, "No, I'm positive. How could you not hear that? It was our son. I think he's out there and he got lost." I said, "No, he's in the house sleeping on the couch." We then both looked through the blinds that were opened right behind us, and we could see all of our children lying there. She said, "That's so weird. It sounds just like our son." I said, "Well, it isn't. He's right there. Besides, I didn't hear a thing." She then stands up and says, "Wow, he's really crying out for help. I need to go look for him." Now at this point, if you knew my wife, you would know she is absolutely creeped out by the woods and wouldn't be caught dead walking into them during daylight, much less at night during a storm. I grabbed her hand and said, "I have been listening intently, and there is absolutely nobody calling out for help. You need to stay here. At this point, I'm getting worried about her. She was acting completely out of character, not to mention that at this time she is 8 months pregnant with our baby daughter." She then says, "What if there's some child out there lost in the woods?" I said, "Well, first of all, I would have been able to hear them. Second, there's no other kids around here for miles, and the odds of them being lost 100 feet from our house that's lit up like a Christmas tree is nil." She then says, "I know, but what if it's a kid?" Before I could say anything, she stands up and starts walking toward the stairs. I jumped up and grabbed her hand again and said, "No, you're not. Get in the house. I don't know what's going on with you, but you need to get inside." She complies, and we both go inside. I didn't know what this was, but I was freaked out. A few months after this, just as it's starting to get dark outside, I heard our front door to our house open. I got up to investigate. We have autistic 6-year-old twins, and we have the door set up so they cannot open it without us being there. So to hear this sound, it could only be my wife. What was weird was the fact that she usually doesn't go outside without saying something to me. I walked out front and saw my wife walking down our private road towards the drive on the side of our house. I asked her what she was doing, and she says she was sitting on the back patio and kept hearing a baby crying out in the woods. I said, "Seriously, and you just decided to walk off into the woods and investigate?" She then looks out into the woods and says, "See, there it is again." Again, I can't hear anything, but what I did notice is that it was completely silent out. I told her, just like before, the chances of a baby getting out in the woods outside of our house is slim to none, and she needs to get back to the house. She said, "What if someone left the baby out there?" I said, "Well, if that were true, I would hear it too." Now at this point, I'm really starting to worry about my wife's mental health. I actually asked her to see a psychiatrist, and she did. Now looking back, I feel really bad about this, knowing what I now know. A key to this moment was that my wife had just given birth to a baby girl a month before. A few days after this, we were out on the front porch. It was early evening, and I had just mowed our lawn for that day, and our 3-year-old was riding around in his little car in front of the house. Now he knows that he is not allowed outside of a certain area that we have mapped off. He loves playing outside, but with the road behind 50 feet from our front porch, we have to be careful, as a lot of boaters will fly through after drinking all day on their boats. As we are talking, we are both keeping an eye on him. A neighbor drives by and stops to say hi for a second. This interaction took approximately 8 seconds, as all they said was, "How are things?" We said, "Good." He told us he would stop by later as his wife had something for the kids, who happens to be one of their teachers at school. We said, "Okay, great," and he drove off. I looked over to where our son was, and he was gone. I called out his name and ran over to the side of the house, and I could hear his car on our side drive. I scolded him for leaving the area, and he said something in his 3-year-old gibberish and pointed to the woods behind our house. I said he had 5 seconds to get back up to the front of the house or else. And he adamantly pointed back in the direction of the woods and kept trying to tell me something. I looked off in the direction of the woods and just assumed he had seen a deer or a squirrel or something and wanted to see it up close. I walked him back up to the front porch, and he was crying the whole way. He got really upset that I wouldn't let him go to the woods, but I just wrote this off as him being curious, and most 3-year-old boys are. Now, this incident isn't isolated, as our twins have done similar things, but nothing quite as extreme as this. There have been nights where we had just laid down for the night and heard a loud bang on the side of our house on the wall behind our bed. It was so loud that I jumped up and looked out the window. Our floodlights had come on, but I didn't see anything. Now, the weird part about this is that our bedroom sits about 12 feet from the ground level, as we have a full-sized basement that's cinder-blocked. I put my slippers on, grabbed one of my 12 gauges, and walked outside. It was dead silent. The floodlights that was on the side of the house had clicked off by this point, so I walked over to the end of the deck and shined my light around the yard. Nothing. I walked around the house and shined the light around intently. As I approached the back side of my house, the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. It felt like someone or something was watching me. I shined the light up into the trees, but nothing. I rounded the corner, and the first thing I noticed was that my 3 dogs that were in their area were not making a peep. Now, our dogs have no filter and will bark at anyone or everyone. This includes me. So, to see them all hiding with their tails between their legs, not making a peep, really had me worried. As I kept walking, all of a sudden the crickets and frogs started making sounds again. It was as if someone had clicked a switch. I walked back into the house and told my wife that I hadn't seen anything. She shrugged and said, okay, as long as our dogs are okay. Due to the circumstances that night, I decided to let the dogs in to sleep with us. This very same thing has happened on all 4 exterior walls of our house. It's random and annoying, but just like this instance, every time there is nothing going on outside. There have been other times where I'm sitting in the house watching a movie. My wife walked over to me and said, "Did you call me?" I said no, and she said she swears that she heard me say her name in her ear. She said that it was definitely my voice, but she didn't understand because it sounded so close, and I was a good 20 feet away from her in my recliner. The important part to this was that she was sitting at the table doing something, and the slider to the backyard was open behind her. Now our back patio sits about 20 feet off the ground and is like a balcony, as there are no stair access outside. I think the previous owner built it for barbecuing. There have been several instances where she would say she heard someone whispering in her ear, but she couldn't make out the sound again. I kept thinking she was going crazy, but as you will see, I think all of this is tied into this final moment where things are revealed. The last thing I want to mention before we get into what just happened is that I have a shooting range built behind my workshop on the opposite side of our property next to a main road. It is kind of on a downslope, but it works perfectly for what I need it for. The range itself is cut straight into the woods, going down about 100 yards or so. When you are at the downrange, the woods are surrounding you on all sides except back to my shop. I have to say, it's always felt creepy when I'm dealing with my targets or mowing. When you're down there, it feels like you're miles from anyone. One day around 5 in the evening, I'm sighting in my new rifle scope. The sun is still up, but was going to start to fade soon, so I knew this was going to be my final test. Up until this point, nothing really happened while I was making my multiple trips downrange, other than this feeling of uneasiness. As I got downrange, I kept getting this feeling like someone or something was watching me. I looked around and didn't see anything. As I was placing stickers over my previous shots, I heard something big off to the side of me. It sounded like a large branch had just snapped off a tree. Now, if you've been in Tennessee, you would know there are a lot of branches that fall off trees randomly out there. So it's nothing new. Except this time, it was very loud and sounded like a fresh, strong piece of wood, if that makes any sense. I turned and looked, but again didn't see anything. I started walking back up to my rifle, and I swear I heard someone right behind me. I turned around, but again saw nothing. As I started to walk again, I heard this deep guttural growl. It was very deep and loud, and what was worse, that it was all around me. I turned around facing the range and started walking backwards. The thought of some rabid dog charging out of the brush had me freaked out. So running was not a good idea. I slowly walked backwards up the hill to my rifle, but nothing happened. I grabbed my rifle and sprayed the target with rapid fire, hoping to scare off whatever it was stalking me. I left 10 rounds in the mag and grabbed my rifle bag and quickly walked back to the house. I never told my wife about this, as I didn't want to freak her out. Fast forward about a year later from when we moved in, and my niece is staying with us as a live-in nanny to earn some money over the summer break for college. We were on our way back from the store. It was about a mile from our house, and I saw 2 eyes reflecting in the headlights coming from a wide tree on the side of the road just ahead of us. It caught my attention because they were way higher than a deer, but a different color and size. Just as I said, "What is that?" and squinted, they vanished. I had made a comment that it was almost as if it knew we could see it, and it moved. The color was kind of a golden/green, but they resembled the mannerism of a large cat, as they felt ominous. It's hard to explain, but I shrugged it off as we were passing the tree and saw nothing. A few moments later, we arrived home. As we are getting bags out of the car, my 3-year-old son comes bolting out of the house, excited to see me. As I was waiting to help her carry in the bags, I heard my dog growl. I looked in the direction she was looking, at my neighbor's property across the street. Now, what I saw has kept me up all night. Up until that point, I have always been skeptical, as I had never seen anything with my own 2 eyes. Even with what happened to me a year prior, I still had my doubts that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Now, my street is kind of spread out neighborhood. Each house sits on several acres, and at the end of our road is the Kentucky Lake. My neighbor's house sits adjacent to mine on about an acre. Directly in front of my house is a wall of woods. Directly behind my house is several thousand acres of untouched forest. As I was looking across the street to my neighbor's property, I saw a large, dark figure between the trees at first. The movement caught me off guard, as it looked like something big moving quickly on all 4s. Then, when it came out into the clear view, it stood up and walked like a man. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. It was very tall, but what's strange about it was the distance it covered, and the fact that when it was in front of the shed, I swear I could see through it. It was clearly walking quickly, but moving faster than any person could at a sprint. More importantly, there was no sound. It was like it was phasing in and out of reality as it moved. I said, "What the hell is that?" And realized that it was looking directly at us. It moved at an angle away from us to minimize its time out in the open, and quickly moved as it could while it was being silent. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized that whatever it was stalking us. I told my niece, "Get in the house now," and I grabbed my son and booked it inside. I grabbed my AR-15 with a short scope and came back outside to see my niece still grabbing stuff out of the car. Knowing I told her firmly and clearly to get in the house, her disregard to my command annoyed me, but still I watched over her without saying a word. As she was slowly walking, she turned toward the woods across the street from the house and suddenly bolted for the house. She ran up the steps in a panicked state. I asked her what she had seen, and her face was pale as a ghost. She said, I heard something big in the woods walking loudly on the leaves, and when I turned toward it, I heard a deep guttural growl. I asked her why she didn't come in when I told her to, and she said she thought I was talking to my son. I told her what I had seen, and she wanted to get closer to get a better look at it. I told her that was not a good idea, and she went anyway. As she was walking down the walkway, I heard that sound of dry leaves crunching in the woods across the street. I told her to stop and come back, take a flashlight. Now at this point, she's about 6 feet away from my wife's SUV. As she turned and started walking back to me, I caught a glimpse of something gray and hairy bolt from behind the SUV back across the street into the woods. My porch is a raised porch, and our SUV is about 6.5 feet tall, and whatever this was, it cleared about 45 feet in what looked like one jump. It moved like lightning, whatever it was. It wanted my niece. It jumped behind the car, out of my line of sight, and was waiting for her. She still doubted my warnings and grabbed the flashlight and walked back toward the car. As she entered my driveway, she stopped dead in her tracks and leaned forward as if she could see something. I asked her what she saw. She turned and ran back up onto the porch with a terrified look on her face, saying, "No, no, no," over and over again. She said it was a figure hiding inside of the tree, and she just seen the eyes. I asked her what they look like, and all she could say is they look like a dull red at first, but as she got closer, they looked dead. I said, "What do you mean by dead?" She said that the pupils look gray, like the way eyes look when you go blind. She said it was really a dark gray, but she swears she could see through it almost like a dark cloud. She wanted to go out again and took a step down the stairs, and as she did, it revealed itself from the tree. I said, "Get inside," and I went in and locked the doors. It looked like a tall humanoid-shaped being. It was definitely tall, and it looked ominous as hell. The next morning, we did a height comparison to the tree limb she had seen it stand over, and it put its height around 9 feet tall, and its eyes were about 6 inches apart. At this point, I didn't know what this thing was, and after doing some research, I think this thing, well, I don't know. I looked to see if there had been any other sightings in Benton County, but nothing. More importantly, I swear it would phase in and out, almost like a shadow person, but bigger and more obvious. At first, I thought it may have been a Bigfoot, but after doing some research, I'm not too sure. It seems to want to communicate telepathically, and this explains why everyone was hearing something that nobody else could hear. Secondly, it has a playback-like communication, so when I heard a dog panting, it was probably one of my dogs that heard. My wife was actually hearing our son crying for help, as he had recently fallen and cried for help. The baby's crying would be our newborn baby, who she had given birth to recently. And it must have heard me call my wife's name and kept telepathically calling my wife's name in my voice. Another thing that my niece had said that night was that she felt compelled to go back outside. She said she felt like this thing was communicating with her somehow, and it wanted her to go back outside. The more I learn about these things, the more things start to make sense that have happened over the past years. One thing that I find extra convincing is that down the road towards the lake there's property that is barbed wire off and is a wall of forest with no driveway. A lot of the property down our road is undeveloped owned land, and on one of these trees there's a large old sign that says "Screamer lives here," with an arrow pointing back into the woods. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the sign, I laughed, thinking maybe the owner screams at trespassers who entered his property, and teenagers put up the sign to mess with him. But when I did a satellite search of our neighborhood, that entire section of the road has no houses or trails or anything, and that's just pure forest as far as the eye can see. One of the things that this thing is said to do is make loud screams when threatened. Well, now you understand my experience. I doubt this is the end. Update. Unfortunately, I cannot afford a camera system, trail cams, that many have recommended. I'm a disabled vet, and I lost my business due to COVID lockdowns. We're struggling to afford the basic amenities. That being said, I did go out and try and gather some evidence. Unfortunately, the camera on my phone is not great for nighttime and seems to make images very grainy with low lighting. As I was sitting here, I did catch some strange sounds on the camera, as well as when I passed an area with my flashlight, there appeared to be something, but when I came back, it was gone. Again, due to the lighting, it's very hard to make out. I haven't felt comfortable going out since. My niece just came back from a week's vacation in Florida. So we plan to sit out for a couple of nights and try and see if we can get anything. This stuff has been happening for a while now, but it was random and far apart. Ever since that last incident, I have seen things that I cannot explain, but they seem to be happening almost on a daily basis. Anyway, last night when my niece arrived, we went out to the front porch to welcome her. I noticed something that looked like a face staring at me, but what was weird was that I was staring at it. It moved back into the shadows without moving, if that makes sense. There are the things that really want to get you out here. There's a story of a man in Georgia who I believe saw the exact same thing I saw that night. We are also going to be working with an artist and trying to get a good picture to show exactly what we saw that night. There have been other things that have happened here that I haven't mentioned. I will also add, I know they may not be connected, but I feel that you guys can be the judge of that. The one thing that I would like to add to this update that I hadn't thought was connected was about 2 weeks ago, my wife and I had an argument about something silly. She decided to walk back into our woods to clear her head. I was on the back patio when I noticed her walking down to my shooting range. I asked her where she was going, and she said to cool off. Now I know the chances of something happening to her was slim, but I found it odd that she would choose to go to the woods rather than simply walk down the road. I quickly got dressed and went down and tried to bring her back. I went to the end of the range and called out her name. After a few minutes of calling out, I heard nothing, not a peep or a twig or anything. Now, the weird part is that it's impossible to move around these woods without making a sound, especially for her. I was worried that she was walking too far, but I had to get back into the house because the kids were alone. It freaked me out because it was as if she had vanished. I went back in the house and debated calling someone, but figured I'd give her a little more time. I went to the back patio and waited. After about an hour, I started to get really worried. I called out her name again and decided that I would call if she hadn't returned at the 1.5-hour mark. After another 20 minutes went by, she came walking back out of the woods. Angry that she had worried me so much, yet I was relieved. I asked her what she was thinking. She said, "What?" as she walked back up to the house. She came in and looked at me like I was crazy. I said, "Did you not hear me calling you?" She said she only heard me once, and she replied, "Now this is where it gets crazy," she said. "I've only been gone 10 or 15 minutes. Why are you freaking out?" When I told her that she'd been gone for an hour and 20 minutes, she didn't believe me. She also said that when she went down there, she didn't go very far, But when she turned around, she started walking and got worried that she had gotten lost. She said she didn't recognize where she was, but something told her to keep walking. She said it felt strange and the air felt different. When she came back out of the woods, she was relieved to see our house. And now, the part that upsets me the most about this was that where she said she was is impossible. I was literally standing 20 to 30 feet away from that spot. If she had been there, not only would I have been able to see her, but she could have talked to me in a normal voice. More concerning is that you can see the house from that spot, and how she felt lost is mind-boggling. I don't know what this is. I thought that again she was losing her mind. I plan to go back to where she was with her to prove that you can see the house from there, but I want her to show me exactly where she went, as well as talking me through everything. I know some people have to be thinking that we are crazy, but I promise that I will do whatever it takes to get proof and keep everyone updated as we figure this out. I know this is hard to believe, but I want to be detailed as possible. All right, so like I said, I had narrated this experience prior without the update. Prior to the update, I thought they were having possibly Dogman or some sort of Shapeshifter experience. With the update, now hearing what the wife had gone through going out into the woods and kind of a loss of time, getting lost, not really recognizing where she's at, I'm thinking possible portal. Now, Kentucky Lake, the Kentucky Lake area is very close to Lake Barclay. And anyone familiar with the channel knows that I've interviewed twice on here, Donald Coleman Jr. or Ronald Coleman Jr. And he lives in that area. He's experienced Dogman. He's experienced Bigfoot. He's former law enforcement, super nice guy. And the area has a lot of goings on. He's actually seen some sort of reptoid thing go up from his house up into the woods across the way. So I really am thinking possibly there is some sort of portal in those woods behind these people's houses. I've reached out to them to see, to possibly, suggest some things, hopefully maybe to get them to come on the show and share in their own words what's been going on. Most of all, I just want to talk to them to possibly give them suggestions. Hey, you possibly have a freaking portal, and what might be coming out of there may be more dangerous than a Dogman or a Shapeshifter. We don't know what's in those rift portals. We know that they're terrifying. Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, whenever I think portal, I think about that hunter that was hunting at Skinwalker Ranch. And I know people are like, Jeff, how many times are you going to talk about that? As many times as I need to and want to, because that experience there freaks me out. Knowing that there's a rift, some sort of portal in our plane here between our parallel universe to their, whatever, however you want to explain it, our reality to their reality. Something is in there, and it's a lot more dangerous than what we have in our reality. Whether it's forgotten or whether it's just a more decayed world on that side.
And there you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed this early morning, middle of the night bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting this channel. It is, after all, your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those who love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, Never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.